2.25 of the destruction of the European Jew. Basically, we're breaking down the actions that preceded the Jewish Holocaust. So we learned from the last video that first they locked up all the German people who were against the Nazis, all the people strong enough to stand up. They locked those people up in the concentration camps first. So this is before the concentration camps were the concentration camps. So that was a test run. They did that with them first, right? Then we learned that they deported all of the Jewish people living in Germany that weren't born in Germany. So they started with deportation. Then all of the Jewish people in the diaspora weren't even upset about this. It was only one person that got really upset enough to kill a Nazi officer in Paris. But like I said, he was by himself. He did not have an army behind him. The diaspora did not have his back. And so what the Nazis end up doing is using that as to help in their propaganda campaign, which they were doing. During their propaganda campaign, they were, you know, just in the news and the press and stuff, they portrayed them as baby killers or baby eaters and rapists and lustful and beastly, and it just sounded so familiar. So that's the propaganda that they used. Then they used that to create civil unrest. So the Germans could then basically riot and pillage and plunder the Jewish communities. But they were smart enough not to expect people to be able to do it to their own neighbors. So they would go to the neighboring town, get those people to come in and burn the Jewish people's houses and steal from them and break all their glass and all that. So think about that. They're going to hire, that's like privatizing the military or privatizing the police, because they don't believe that, you know, the people that work with you and see you every day are going to be able to treat you like that. Think about that. After the civil unrest, right? Or they call them something, I can't pronounce it, a pogroms or something, I don't know. Anyway, so after that happened, they ended up arresting mad Jews, Jewish people, and that is after it was the Germans that was doing the damaging of the property. They arrested mad Jews and then charged them for the cleanup. Oh boy, and then they charged them for the cleanup. Yes. So while all of this was happening, you know, parts of the Jewish people were so afraid, and rather than to fight back, they took their own lives. They committed suicide. And my question to us, family, is, who are you? Who are you? Are you the one to see all this craziness going outside and you just sit in your house and kill yourself and you and your whole family? Or do you pick up whatever the nearest thing you got in your house and you go outside and you fight? Which one are you? Anyway, back to the story. Around the same time, they were also basically putting laws in place. They're very Jim Crow-esque, if I might say. Very Jim Crow-esque laws. And the reason why the Germans that weren't Jewish, of course, were so okay with it is because they were given privileges. They were given jobs that the Jewish people were being pushed out of. They were given the apartments that the Jewish people were pushed out of. So that's why they were so okay with what's happening. It's like, okay, I can turn a blind eye. Now, they did not trust them to be able to turn on their neighbors and actually, you know, burn and loot and pillage their own specific neighbors. But they were still able to turn a blind eye and watch a stranger do it and not help and not do anything. And the last thing that's very interesting is they were very, very concerned with Jewish people being able to hide and conceal their identities, which is interesting to me as a Black person, because we cannot hide and we cannot conceal our identity. So what's interesting to me is, like, when we look at these two groups of people, they look the same to us. So what's going to be interesting is, as we go further, we're going to see more of why they did not want them to hide. What was it about them that they didn't want them to hide? Because it wasn't religion. But let's get into 2.25.
All Jewish finances were attacked. Civil servants, doctors and lawyers were all subject to bans. The young university-educated technocrats and administrators in all fields, statisticians, urban planners, geographers, historians, were calculating the advantages for themselves of the Jews being eliminated.
Germany is now at full employment. Many businesses want to expand, and Goering passed decrees a law that Jews must register all of their property. He has an inventory of everything they own, and there's a process of passing one decree after another, forcing Jews out of certain spheres of the economy, is already underway.
The goal was still for the Jews to be deported as quickly as possible, or to emigrate. It was still possible to emigrate at that point, and that's what the powers that be wanted, even though on the other hand they were making it difficult by confiscating people's property.
The vast majority of the population now were increasingly sympathetic to the notion that Jews, such as lawyers and doctors, should leave Germany.
So I thought this was particularly interesting, okay, because I think that sometimes there are certain groups of black people who feel that higher education makes them better and different on the black scale, I guess you want to call it. But at the end of the day, everybody was in the hole. Everybody got pushed out. Everybody lost their job, whether you have a license to be a doctor or whether you have a license to be a plumber. They revoked all of them. They were all treated the same. So understand that education is a wonderful thing. I'm not against people getting an education, but understand that when it comes to this fight in white supremacy, education will not save you.
Some professions, such as doctors, people tried to denounce their colleagues. Houses and apartments became available.
They say whole university departments were emptied in one fell swoop. Suddenly, half your colleagues were gone. Didn't you notice? You didn't notice they weren't there anymore? How could people be so indifferent about them just disappearing from one day to another?
Nobody spoke up and said it was scandalous and shameful what was happening. Even 100 people would have been admirable. But there wasn't a single one. And that's astonishing.
Many of these discriminatory measures were put into practice after the November pogrom. They weren't allowed to sit on public benches or go to the swimming pool.
Don't let the similarities of what they're doing here and Jim Crow be lost on you. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty on why I believe they were able to convince a lot of the German people to do this, aside from the propaganda and everything else. They said as they started pushing the Jewish people out of certain places, then apartments and everything became available. Doesn't that sound familiar? Sounds like gentrification.
One strategy was labeling people, marking them with a yellow star. Another form of labeling was the 1938 decree that required all Jews in the Reich to add the name Israel or Sarah to their first names, because the Nazis believed that Jews were concealing themselves and trying to hide. So from January 1939, you'd have to call yourself Friedrich Israel, for example.
They ain't got to do that. Our melanin marks us. Our melanin is our yellow star. Our melanin is the name in our names. We can't hide.
Kristallnacht, after the Night of Broken Glass, there was a new effort by the Roosevelt administration to persuade Western Hemisphere countries to take in more persecuted people.
This change of policy is partly the result of popular outrage, horror about what is happening in Vienna, in Berlin. Even the Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, who did not like Jews, even Chamberlain is upset by burning synagogues.
Some 10,000
Jewish children were sent and taken to England and left their parents and so on. They didn't understand the full ramifications, that they never see their parents again.
The British government allowed unaccompanied children into the country on ordinary tourist visas. A few very young children, accompanied by other older children, were included in the program. Private individuals or organizations had to undertake to provide for them and their education, and to arrange for them to leave Great Britain at a later date. Parents were not allowed to accompany their children. The first group arrived in Britain in December 1938.
But it wasn't enough. There were never enough places of refuge for Jews around the world. The struggle of Jews to leave Germany and Austria is ferocious. Jews are looking for anywhere to go in the world. Now the Germans do not stop that.
How can you leave if you have no passport, no nationality? We no longer had German nationality and no money. How could we ever emigrate?
From the November pogrom till the end of that year, Jewish traders all had their licenses revoked, which meant that from the start of 1939 there were no more Jewish businesses. The Jews had their livelihoods taken from them.
The Jews were already a pariah group on the fringes of society, disliked by many, demonized by the regime, and there was no, put it in a very crude sense, there was no political mileage to be gained by standing up for the Jews.
White supremacists love tricking you out of giving up your kids. They love to put you in a situation where you feel you have to give up your child. You notice that?
Trying to determine why an SUV they believe was carrying a family of 8 just plunged off a cliff in Northern California. Jennifer and Sarah Hart from Washington State and 3 of their children were found dead at the scene. The other 3 are still missing at this hour. Their son, Devontae Hart, became well known back in 2014 because of this picture showing him hugging a police sergeant at a protest. Anne-Marie Green is here tracking this investigation. Anne-Marie, it's such a bizarre, sad story.
It really is. Still a lot of questions. Gail, good morning, everyone. Police say that they found the family's vehicle Monday after a passerby spotted it at the bottom of a cliff. Police don't know what caused the crash, but they believe that all 6 kids who were adopted were inside the car, and none of them were wearing their seatbelts.
An entire family vanished.
Mendocino County Sheriff Tom Allman said there were no skid or brake marks where the Hart family's car plunged 100 feet off a cliff. According to police, the SUV pulled out on a dirt turnout. It then traveled about 75 feet before going over the cliff's edge and into the Pacific Ocean. Police say they are still searching for 16-year-old Hannah, 12-year-old Sierra, and 15-year-old Devontae Hart. Devontae gained national attention in 2014 when he was photographed hugging a Portland police officer at a protest.
Those children were blessed, and so were Jen and Sarah.
Some family friends describe the Harts as tight-knit, but others noticed problems. In 2011, Sarah Hart pleaded guilty in Minnesota to domestic assault. According to court records, a teacher saw bruises on the couple's 6-year-old daughter. The girl told the teacher, "Mom hit me." Sarah Hart allegedly admitted to police she let her anger get out of control. Bruce and Dana DeCobb, who live next door, said they worried about the kids.
They portray this happy little family, and yet their daughter's telling us, please, 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 begging us not to make her go back, and that they're abusing her. And then Devontae coming over here and telling us that, you know, he's being starved to death.
Dana DeCobb said she called Child Protective Services on Friday.
I was trying to help them and protect them, and this is the result.